So today we're talking about something in Germany that should terrify basically anyone who thinks that financial institutions are apolitical. Banks across Germany are systematically terminating accounts belonging to people like journalists, political parties, and media outlets that exist. And they're doing it without explanation across an entire political spectrum as a whole. Now, German journalist Aya Velázquez celebrated sarcastically on social media this month, saying,
"Yay, my first account cancellation. To be honest, I was wondering why it took me so long."
Now, her bank had just terminated her business account after years of service. She identified as politically left-wing, but she committed the unforgivable sin of criticizing Germany's pandemic measures. Apparently, that's enough to get you financially blacklisted over there. And this is even at a bank that basically markets itself as social and ecological. Now, Velázquez had basically tried to register her pseudonym as an alias on the account because her supporters kept getting error messages when sending in donations. And this is completely reasonable since a new EU regulation from October 2025 requires banks to actually verify that recipients' names match the IBAN. Now, the bank was initially cooperative, but 10 days later, they sent her a termination letter that basically discontinued all service. In this particular instance, she has no explanation or any kind of recourse whatsoever. The bank won't actually comment on anything, trying to cite data protection and banking secrecy. Now, in January of 2025, the Swiss-based radio station Kontrafunk lost its account at Volksbank in Pirna, Saxony, without any kind of explanation. They paid nearly 6,000 euros annually in account management fees for an account that was always in credit and represented zero actual risk. According to research by the outlet Multipolar, around 40% of government critical media organizations have had accounts terminated since 2020, which is a massive amount. Political parties across this entire spectrum are getting hit. It's not just one or two or on one side or on the other. Now, two cooperative banks terminated accounts for the Alternative for Germany Party, also known as AfD. In November of 2025, one bank even contacted a customer trying to donate, warning them about the actual recipient's political orientation and demanding that they stop the payment. They later called it a human oversight, but we have whistleblowers that actually claim banks have these IT systems specifically configured to actually flag certain political transactions that exist. And even the Socialist Equity Party, classified as a left-wing extremist, lost its account at Postbank in 2024. They ended up at GLS Bank temporarily, and obviously they lost some income because of that. Now, mind you, this is not, like I said before, a left or a right-wing thing. Instead, it's anyone operating outside the approved narrative. So journalists, independent media, dissidents, if you ask questions the state doesn't like, or, for example, you take any position that it's not in line with at that particular time, you become a financial target. Now, compare that with what's supposed to actually protect people. Germany had actually implemented the EU Payment Accounts Directive in 2016. Now, what this does is it essentially guarantees everyone a right to a basic account. This includes people like illegal aliens and homeless people. Now, the basic account ensures participation in payment transactions, though it only works on a credit basis with zero overdraft protection, obviously. Termination is possible, but supposedly subject to very strict conditions. The problem is that private banks and cooperative banks like GLS can refuse to open accounts or terminate them without giving any reasons, relying on things like freedom of contract. Savings banks, however, are public law institutions that are subject to neutrality requirements and contractual obligations. This means that they can't just arbitrarily refuse service to people, or they're not supposed to be able to, right? And the issue is that they're still trying to anyways, despite that. One savings bank wanted to actually cancel a political party's account in 2024, even though the party isn't even banned. The Chemnitz Administrative Court ruled in early 2025 that the termination wasn't legal, citing that they had to have like equal treatment since other parties also kept accounts there. And the savings bank accepted the ruling essentially because it had no choice in the matter. Now, I started looking into it when I kind of heard about this, and it turns out that none of this is actually new. In 2021, a national conservative weekly had its account terminated. Unlike today, though, journalist associations actually protested this, and the bank withdrew the termination. And this was kind of encouraging to see because it tells you people at a certain point still had some kind of power in their country, right? Like courts have consistently ruled that savings banks can't discriminate against political organizations, specifically in Germany, but enforcement is always inconsistent. And the enforcement being inconsistent kind of is normal. We see that in all places. We even see that here in the States, right? Like look at Doge, for example, uncovering billions of dollars or whatever in fraud, but no one actually getting indicted behind it. But people do get indicted for things like unemployment theft all the time. So the little people get hit while the God-level political class gets away with literally everything. And the president of the savings bank, the association anyways, Ulrich Reuter, made the institution's position really clear when he took office in 2024, when he said that savings banks can't choose their customers, but they don't have to serve, quote, extreme parties in a friendly manner and shouldn't expect good service either. Now, keep in mind, this is a guy that's like the senior banking official openly stating political discrimination in their own policy. And the AfD introduced legislation in Bundestag, Germany, in November of 2025 to ban politically motivated debanking. Now, every other party rejected it entirely, saying freedom of contract applies and there's no need for any action. They specifically referenced Trump's executive order from August of 2025 that was doing things like targeting debanking here in the United States.
Department of Justice to the CFPB and others to regulate and force banks to get rid of certain customers based on reputational risk. And that definition of reputational risk was incredibly broad to include things like gun dealerships, to include things like conservative beliefs. And that allowed these banks like JP Morgan Chase to go on a crusade, getting rid of so many of their customers whose political ideology they didn't agree with.
Trump's order eliminated the use of reputational risk as a factor in banking decisions and required financial institutions to actually identify and reinstate customers that were denied services by December 5th of 2025. And it mandated investigations and enforcement actions, including things like fines against institutions that engaged in political debanking, basically. And the order explicitly cited Operation Choke Point, which is a federal debanking initiative that targeted lawful industries for political reasons. So Germany taking the opposite approach, the government's Ministry of Finance, when asked about politically motivated account terminations, refused completely to comment, citing essentially non-existent security concerns, and then lied, saying that it had no real information about any of these terminations, which makes no sense because me as just some random guy overseas has information about these terminations. So anyways, basically, this is financial infrastructure being just completely weaponized for political control. And when you can't maintain a bank account, you can't receive donations, you can't pay employees, or participate in the modern economy as it is. And it doesn't matter if you're far right or if you're far left or just a journalist who asked inconvenient questions during the pandemic or after the pandemic about the pandemic. The mechanism is the same, right? The banks acting as political enforcers while hiding behind banking secrecy like cowards and freedom of contract. And all of this kind of adds up to the same thing. Like, you don't actually need their permission to participate in the economy if you make your own. And this is where Monero comes in and why governments absolutely hate it. Now, for those that don't know, I know almost everyone on this channel watching this probably already is familiar with this, but Monero is a cryptocurrency, but unlike Bitcoin, where every transaction is permanently recorded on a blockchain, Monero transactions are completely private by default. Now, every single transaction uses ring signatures, stealth addresses, and encrypted amounts, basically. It's a very layman approach to me explaining this. You can't actually trace who sent them and to who. And the IRS offered this $600,000 or $625,000 reward in 2020 to anyone that could crack Monero's anonymity. And Chainalysis, which is a company that basically does what the feds aren't capable of doing, right? Like, the feds are too stupid to work with cryptocurrency on a low level, so a lot of times they outsource it to these other companies. And Chainalysis is one of these companies. And Chainalysis got this bounty for $600,000 or whatever. And they were like, yeah, we'll crack Monero. They don't crack Monero. But they put out a paper saying, like, if we set up nodes, then when people do transactions, we can see their IP addresses, which is not, it's not a revelation. It's like, if you go to someone's website, they can see your IP address. And the solution to that is either use Tor or self-host. I advise doing both. This solves the entire debanking problem entirely, though. That's my point. When that German journalist lost her bank account, like, her supporters couldn't actually send donations without triggering things like bank surveillance. And with Monero, there's no intermediary to actually deny service. There's no bank account to terminate your account and no one telling you what you can or can't do. They're not going to say, oh, you can't withdraw your money. Like, there's no government bureaucracy that's dictating whether your politics are acceptable or offensive. And essentially, in that case, you hold your own money and you can send it to whomever you want, whenever you want, with no one's permission or knowledge. And the practical applications are already happening in vast amounts. Like, Monero received nearly $1 million in donations in 2025 alone through its community crowdfunding system. And freelancers use it to do things like get paid across borders without any kind of banking delays or nonsensical fees, where, like, things that don't exist, like account maintenance. Like, account maintenance for a digital account, what's the maintenance there? Especially with fractional reserve banking, where I put in 1,000 and you can loan out 9 times that and get interest on it. It's insane. But things like independent media outlets accept it for subscriptions and support. And it's not theoretical at all. People are using it around the world to circumvent things like financial surveillance and control. And governments absolutely know this, which is why they're trying to restrict things like privacy coins. There are very few of them. Monero's the only one that I ever advise. But that's kind of the beauty of these kind of decentralized systems, right? There's no actual CEO to threaten, unlike some other projects that exist out there where there are very public figures who exist. And there's no server to seize or company to regulate. And Monero, there's no trusted setup to trust, right? Monero runs on thousands of computers worldwide, including mine. I mine on a regular basis. And every user in that network helps aid in making it better. And the German government really sees no need for action on debanking because banks are doing exactly what the state wants. They're enforcing political conformity through financial control. And we all know, like, at the end of the day, if you're not able to go to the market and buy food, how's that going to go? So, like, they don't need to actually ban dissent when they can just cut off your ability to earn money, accept donations, get food, pay for where you live, or pay for any other type of services that exist. Now, the people there have a couple things they can do, right? Like, they can wait for politicians to try to protect them, or they can use the tools that already exist that make permission irrelevant in this case. And Monero isn't the only solution, but it's the one specifically designed to prevent exactly this kind of financial censorship that's going on. When banks become political enforcers, the answer is not begging them to be fair. It's making them obsolete. So stay safe, stay aware. There are real adversaries out there, guys. As always, I'll see you in the next video.